Well,
Yeah. Do they know the story that I?
we know how it is difficult to get you,
well,
but we
Gee,
were ambushing in many places. So eventually,
I reached out like a year. I followed up with him exactly 1 year on the day. No, seriously. Um, and
I guess he appreciated your persistence.
yes, my Israeli persistence is
what's
I think we have some background noise.
yeah. If you want to eliminate that background noise, and we'll get
Yeah,
started. We'll get started now. We're at 102. Um,
I'm gonna ask for everyone to let's do this. I'm gonna mute everyone for now. And then we'll just get started. Okay. All right. Feel free to kick us off whenever, Zach.
okay, absolutely. We'll keep this very short. Um, Dr. Knuth is Emeritus Stanford. He's a Turing Award winner. He is a giant in the field. We are so uh, grateful to have you here to uh, learn. And we're going to really encourage a very interactive discussion because we want to really engage everyone here and learn as much as possible. So, without further ado, everyone want to give a massive virtual applause for Don here, and we'll get started with questions.
beautiful. Okay.
That's really cool.
I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I made sure that they didn't tell me any of the questions in advance because I think you learn more when I give a bad answer uh, that's improvised than if I give a canned answer. So,
Interesting.
this is a tradition that I learned from Richard Feynman when I was teaching at Caltech more than 50 years ago. At the last class, he always said, "You don't if you come, it's just all questions answered on anything you want to know except uh, religion, politics, or final exam or something like that." And I started doing that in my Stanford classes. And so here we are. Ask me anything.
Okay, you heard that, guys. Ask me anything except for religion, politics, and something else. Uh,
Uh, Final exam.
Final exams.
There is no final exam.
How about we just start from the chat? Um, Dr. Dr. Jason Bernard asks, who says, "Thank you so much for doing this. My research is mainly on automated modeling using grammatical inference. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the potential challenges and impact of automated modeling, especially with grammars. I mainly use L systems and graph grammars." So, I mean,
Okay, so yeah, nice question. But I'm not quite sure I know grammatically.
right.
But I've heard of modeling, and I, I like the idea of models very much. But I hope it also involves some thinking on your part. When you say automatic, you get a model, but how do you? What have you learned from that? Long ago, well, actually, 60 years ago, I wrote a program called SOL, Simulation Oriented Language, and it was, and it made models of stuff, but you learn more writing the program than you did actually running the model. And that has always been true from the very earliest days of computer. One of the first back in about 1950, there were 5 customers for UNIVAC. That UNIVAC engineers approach, and one of them was Prudential, and one of them was the U.S. Census Bureau, and so on. But one of the five was AC Nielsen Incorporated,
Hmm.
and they went to talk to AC Nielsen to how a computer might better work in their business, and
Mhm.
and it turned out that so they sort of made a model of what AC Nielsen was doing in 1950, and and just by the process of making up that model, they realized that they could do everything much better just using 3x5 cards. They didn't need a computer.
Interesting. That's interesting. James.
But I didn't get to
Oh,
Elsa's.
okay. Yeah.
So yeah, okay. My own experience has has not been with these parallel these parallel. So I don't have personal experience with it, but I know I know that it's very powerful. But I still think the main point is that you have to think about you have to get insights yourself and not just
Right.
not just get some model that you then run. Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So you spoke in 1997. This is Sharia says, asked the question. You spoke in 1997 on the topic of advice to young people that if you felt your research was too popular, you'd feel compelled to move away from it. By now, you are considered a giant in the field, and your research is at the core of many advances in algorithmic analysis. How do you think that the popularity of your research interests has changed the field, have changed as the field has grown? And is your research still niche enough for you to sustain your interest or pursuit in it?
Okay. Well, I guess in 1997, I was reacting against the bandwagon effect that everybody seemed to be jumping on the same bandwagon all the time, and that really everybody's different and has a different set of expertise, and so there's it's much better if you get to use your own personal expertise on problems that fit your own niche. Um, but certainly I have no problems now because 99% of the world is working on large language models, and I'm working on Hamiltonian circuits. But there's uh, my problem right now is not to sustain the flow of interesting thing to work on. It's really to figure out how to cut. I'm still getting too many ideas that would distract me. Different rabbit holes that I could go down. But then I wouldn't get anything more out the door. So I mean, just yesterday okay, the thing I'm actually writing this week, this weekend, is about Hamiltonian cycles in directed graphs, and I was looking for great models of this problem, and I realized that I can take any undirected graph that I love, and I can orient its edges in various interesting ways, and then I can ask the question: is there a Hamiltonian cycle in this orient graph? And wow, I found some some new variants of gray codes yesterday, and I'm working on new variants of permutation generators this afternoon. So anyway, the main thing I think to learn is how to ask questions.
Mhm.
And then if you get too good at that, then you have to figure out what questions not to answer.
Interesting.
Okay,
Charles,
thank you.
what?
I just said thank you to Shreyas.
Got it. Okay. Charles Clark asks, he says, thank you so much for doing this. I'm curious as to your thoughts about what the future of computer science will look like. For instance, what do you think will be different between the computer science of today and the computer science 25 years from now?
Okay, I guess I should have started out by saying there are two kinds of questions that are low on my. I mean,
One of them is that.
You know, I'd like to say that was a great question, but in fact, foretelling the future is the thing I guess the whole. I guess one of the best things in my life is that I've never been good at foretelling the future because for example, I never knew how hard it was going to be to write these books. But it was, I don't know, 25 years ago when somebody from ACM was interviewing me for some reason. I think it was Leah Huffman, but anyway, she asked, what was the most surprising thing that's happened, the thing you least expected? And immediately I could name a dozen things that surprised me. And then her next question was, well, what was the least surprising thing? What was the thing? What were the things that you anticipated? And I was stumped. I couldn't think of a single thing. So the two kind of questions that I don't think I'm competent are is foretelling the future, and the second kind is the what is your favorite X?
Right. Okay. We'll note.
Okay.
Eliminate all of those. Okay. I'm looking here. Alex asks, is there any topic or technique in programming from the past that has been abandoned that you think deserves a second chance?
Well, another good question. I was talking at our departmental retreat last week, and I was talking to a guy who works on compilers, and he is looking for ways to get even better compilers now, but it's all. But the compiler is still only working from one input. When you're writing a program, you've got all kinds of ways you could have written it, but you get to write only one text, and then the compiler has to figure out from that the whole universe of possible programs that you could have written for the application you have in mind. So I think it'd be worthwhile thinking about dialogues between the compiler and the programmer.
Okay.
I mean, it's a simple thing. The compiler want to say, is this variable always going to be positive? Or non-negative?
Right. No, absolutely. That makes tons. Nick asks, sorry, I have to answer this one. James asks if any algorithms. Okay, James, I'm going to have to hold off on your question here for a second. Nick asks, with the rise of LLMs with young learners and their ease of solving introductory CS and math problems, what tips do you have nowadays for nurturing deep understanding in topics and creativity and curiosity from the vantage point of a parent or a teacher?
Yeah, okay. I guess the main, I'm trying to encourage also the people who are designing these systems now to assume that the people using the systems are going to have curiosity. I try to give you a little background. We had in the 60s there was something called programmed instruction, which you got a special book, and you would start at number one, and then it would give you a statement, and then you're saying what's your answer to this question, and if you answer A, it says go to page, or, go to page 32. A, or if your answer is B, go to the third page, and so on. And I always intentionally gave the wrong answers because I wanted to see what the author had put on those pages. So now we're getting people are preparing automated systems for where after you ask a question, then they answer the question, but then they say, oh, maybe they didn't like if you ask a stupid question. But I'm saying you get much more out of seeing what this LLM is going to tell you as an answer to a stupid question if you know what you're doing and you keep trying it. So that's one thing. Another thing, I think to help your creativity, you like to have sort of something that's random, outside the box, unexpected. And when I was an undergrad student, I used to keep my stack of Mad magazines next to me all the time, and whenever I had to write an essay or no matter what the course was, I would think about it a little bit, but then I'd turn to the Mad magazines, and it would just be completely full of stuff that got my mind somehow ready to write that essay. Anyway, you can use them in lots of ways. The worst mistakes are when you just let them do all the work and then you don't even think about it. So
Right.
you got a program that, or you ask it to write a program for you and say, okay, I'll use that program, and but you don't even read the program while they're trying to figure out what it was doing. Well, after a year of doing this, your brain starts to atrophy. You have to keep re-exercising your little gray cells, and so I intentionally do a lot of things the hard way. It's great to have things automated that can check me, but I also have to check them, and I don't even sync my files between computers automatically. If I make a change in one file on one machine, I mean, the computer in my office is completely standalone, no connection to the network. And every once in a while, I put stuff onto a little USB thing and back up stuff at Stanford, and then I rethink what I've been doing. It takes more time, but it's much better because I get to remember what I was doing. It goes, in one ear and out the other, but in between, I did think about it.
One question that I have actually is do you have any stories, interacting with any of the famous Turing Award winners or any of the other giants in computer science that you might?
Yes.
Even Dr. Feynman.
Yes, name okay. Yeah, okay, Feynman. Well, for example, well, in the 60s, we used to come to each other's lectures, and it was terrifying for me to see him sitting in the front row. But I guess what my main memory was that he and I both received the Medal of Science from President Carter, and we were sitting, we were sitting together at the I guess it might have been the East Wing. I don't know where we were, but uh, uh, and and uh, uh, and so just when my name is called, he raps me on the shoulder and says, "Okay, Don, here's your big moment." And in the reception afterwards, there was a wooden model of something that Thomas Jefferson had made that was hanging from the ceiling, and Feynman raised his hand and started to spin it. Okay, so anyway, there's lots of anecdotes. Give me another name and I'll give you another story.
Parsa, let's
Yeah,
everyone put
we
it in
actually
the chat.
had someone mention Dr. Robert Sedgwick as well.
Bob Sedgwick, yeah, okay, well, okay, so he, I guess he's my only student who founded two computer science. No, I don't know if Jeff did or me, but Bob, uh, 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 well, it's wonderful that he's reaching so many people with his lectures and the classes that he's designed. I didn't believe that that you could get that high a percentage of undergraduates that studying deep stuff, and so he really knows how to explain things and do it reliably. I guess one of the main anecdotes is how much time he puts into the lectures. When he first introduced the idea of automated animated algorithms. He used to spend more than 40 hours for every lecture that he gave at I guess it was Brown at the time.
Hmm.
And then when he started writing his textbooks, he would spend incredible amounts of time designing the pages in raw PostScript, in the illustrations for the thing. This appreciation for graphics was really a huge part of the reason he's been so effective.
One, I guess, if we want to keep
There was, yeah,
in the chat, maybe we can poll people and see if we really like these stories.
I've heard Dijkstra. You interacted with Dijkstra as well when he came to visit you in the early 60s, and maybe on some trips in Europe too. Do you have any notable stories with?
Yeah. I mean, well, he so he and I were both consultants to Burroughs during the 60s, and so we would meet on those occasions, and then I would realize how encyclopedic his knowledge was, because he was working on many concepts that never got it into paper. I also visited him when he was in Texas, and we at his home in the Netherlands in the early days. We played. He had a Bolsendorfer piano, and we played four hands. I had to let him lead when we played the piano, of course. And his great strength was his inability to compromise. This could also make him a difficult colleague, but it was those extremely high standards that made his principles sort of timeless. The last years of his life, though, for some reason, he decided not to write computer programs anymore. He was just going to do everything with pencil and paper, and I never understood that.
Did you ever have any interactions with Alan Turing, Tim Berners-Lee, Bill Gates, or Steve Jobs?
Okay, so yes, no, not Alan Turing. My goodness, he died when I was in 8th grade. Or yeah, Tim, well, okay, I didn't work much with Tim. I mostly met him at the thing, but with Bill Gates, we uh, uh, he, well, there's I guess the most fun thing is when he came to Stanford, uh, and the Stanford Development Office, was trying to get him to make a donation to the university, and I guess this was the early '90s, um, and so they set up an appointment, and on that day I'd stayed up the night before. I was working on a problem about random graphs. It's called the birth of the giant component, and about 2 in the morning I come up with a with a surprising breakthrough, uh, because I noticed that I'd calculated some numbers, and one of the numbers was 23023, and and I said, my gosh, that's 7 times 11 times 13 times 23. That must be a reason for that number. And so then once I saw that pattern, all of a sudden the whole thing clicked. I and I had a little diagram of what happens when there's a big bang, when the components of a random graph start to evolve. And so I drew this picture on the blackboard as I'm talking to Bill, and he seemed to like the excitement that I had when I was describing what I'd come up with that night. And so afterwards he told the people in the development office that, wow, that that thing Don Klug showed me was really impressive, and so then development office people came with a camera, and they took a picture of the thing I put on the blackboard and everything, and I always say to people in theoretical computer science, who says theory is useless, because then we got our new building, the Gates Computer Science Building.
You ever run into Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs, yeah. Well, there's one of for a while. One of the most common questions I was asked was, "Is the story about you and Steve Jobs true?" And the story goes something like, so I visited Apple. I think it was 82 or 83. It was early on, when the Macintosh hadn't been announced yet, but there's a computer they had called a Lisa, which was the big thing, and anyway, I ran into, and then I met Steve and a lot of other people that day, and the story goes that Steve comes up to me and says, "Oh, Professor Knuth, I've read all your books," and according to the story, then I said, "Bullshit." Well, so the question is that a true story? And I don't think it's true, because I don't talk like that. In fact, I was hesitating just now whether I should talk like that for the first time. But I might have said something like, wow, nobody else has ever told me that, or wow, I can't remember them myself, or what. But anyway, that's the story. But I do remember that, that he was extremely always moving. His hands were uh, uh, flying up and down and around, and he on that day, the thing that was most inciting to him that particular day was that he said he had this dream that uh, uh, every day there would be a vinyl disc containing upgrades to everybody's software. Uh, and that this would be, this way they'd be able to update computer software. And this disc would sell for a nickel or 10 cents or something like that. So everybody, I mean, this was before we had internet or any good way of communicating.
What about, and then we'll end the stories part with Marvin Minsky and John McCarthy.
Okay, so well, Minsky, I was in his house once during a visit in '62. I was in MIT I was still a grad student at Caltech, and I was chair of a committee to put input output conventions into Algol 60 language, and we went to Minsky's house, and I also met see more of it. Other guy was there that worked with children. Anyway,
Yeah.
his house was incredible. It was full of bookshelves in the middle of every room. You couldn't see where you were going. And books everywhere. But then in another room there was a piano which Ray Kurzweil. This must have been a few years later when the piano was there. Ray Kurzweil had made a grand piano simulation. Yeah, that was the late '80s when I played on Kurzweil's piano. But anyway, yeah, Minsky his house was impossible to move around in, um, uh, uh, just like Stallman's office. Okay, and the other one you wanted was John McCarthy. Well, of course, he was his house was just 100 yards that direction.
Wow.
And so we ran into each other all the time, and he, again, like Dykstra, he would discuss topics from all parts of life, and that was much closer. And then I got a chance to spend a year up in his lab when I was developing tech.
That's really awesome. Yiziao asks, Dr. Knuth, in your opinion, should large language models be regarded as fundamental elements of computer science on par with algorithms and data structures, or as advanced areas of study such as programming language, security, etc.?
So I don't like to compare apples to oranges. They're both great fruits. And they have different reasons for being good. So, and the main problem I have with these language models is that there's generally a black box. There's no understanding, and so it's very hard to believe something that's just a fake. they're getting more ways to build trust into it, but by taking the outputs and having something reliable to. But I don't know. It's so easy to give to fool people, and one of the reasons it's so successful is because the pros you get from a large language model is much better than all the pros that it was supposedly mimicking. But your question was different. Are these is one going to replace the other, or are they all fundamental? The answer is they're all fundamental, and each one is worthy of pushing further. Not everything is timeless. I mean, at some points in my life, it was very important for me to have tables of identities about special functions, or tables of how to factor a number, things like this. So that's completely the only thing interesting about those books to me now is the notes that I made at the time, or the references that they had in the preface, so that I would know what the development of the thoughts was.
Right. Donald Hobson asks, what are the most abstract and powerful features you think aren't present in most programming languages? Things that are theoretically possible, but difficult to write in any normal language. For example, searching over the space of all possible programs, working with formal ZFC proofs. What would you, what would you want in the most abstract, mathematical, logic focused programming language?
That's interesting question. Okay. I guess the closest we have now is lean. And well, there's other things I've used, but I really mostly want a language that mirrors my own intuitions. I want it to. So the more it gets to be like formal logic, the less it is easy for me to understand. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of paradoxes about truth tellers and liars and things, and so you can check this stuff, but it doesn't correspond to what I want in a program language. What I want is to be able to find an interesting Hamiltonian cycle. I want to solve a problem that often I want to solve a problem that gives me a good graphic. You were talking about Cedric. So those are, but in all cases, I want something that I'll be able to that will somehow match my own personal way of viewing the program, and also something that will be easy to. The language is to me is always less important than the debugger.
Interesting. Hi, Donald Knuth. Thank you again. I'm Itai from Weizmann Institute in Israel. My question is, can you please tell me the story behind the development of TEX and Metafont? Did you really put all of the other projects on hold for a few years?
Okay, so tell me this. So that story there's a book called Digital Typography, which I think it starts with the chapter that talks about that. But anyway, yes, in fact, my plan for a sabbatical year, I think it was going to be 77, 78. I was going to spend in Chile to learn Spanish. That was going to be my sabbatical, and we already made arrangements. But in February of 77, I learned about the existence of a machine that could make books digitally with pixels. And I had been quite worried because for previous years, it was impossible for my publishers to find anybody who could produce books that looked anything like the ones that they could do in the 60s. The technology of printing had completely changed, and the new technology was only good at the things that were for mass markets and not for things like computer scientists. So I didn't know what to do. But meanwhile, I was going to have my sabbatical in South America. But in February, I saw one of the first examples of something that was done with pixels and actually looked like quality book. It was the proofs of Pat Winston's second edition of his artificial intelligence book. Anyway, and a week after I saw those proofs, I flew to Southern California to see the machine. I decided to spend my sabbatical year at Stanford at McCarthy's AI lab so that I could work on this. And I didn't finish until 84, 85. So that was 7 years. However, I did my first big project with it was volume 2 of the Art of Computer Programming, which was the one that needed to be produced. And so while I'm working on tech, I'm also typing page by page volume 2 as the first big example of tech. And I kept a log it turned out that every 5 pages I typed, I entered in, I would think of some way to improve tech for the first 400 pages or so. And then the last 300 pages were drudge work. I didn't get any more ideas of typing those in. But anyway, that was the only. In fact, writing software like that is much harder than writing books and teaching. So I also took a couple of years off leave of absence from teaching.
I'm curious, do you have more of an optimistic or pessimistic view of how AI is going to impact employment and the future of work?
Okay, for employment in the future of work, I don't. You're asking me to predict the future again.
Oh, okay, we'll skip that. Okay, we'll move to the next one.
I saw that there's the word future right in there, but anyway, of course I think about it, and whenever big change like this occur, then other things come up, and all kinds of personal services and influencers and all kinds of things you know, there used to be a huge number of jobs oriented to taking care of horses. So things switch, but so certainly the boring jobs that can easily be automated would go away now. What about the story that was in the paper recently about like Amazon going to 90% robots or something like that? I don't know.
Right. Of course.
We certainly always have to adapt, and my pessimism comes from people believing in fakery, and my optimism comes from the enhancement of creativity when you have more tools to jog your mind and to appreciate all sides of a subject.
Right. No, absolutely. Anir asks, well, he says, thank you very much for taking the time to do this. Okay, we're skipping. It's the future question.
Yeah, thank you.
Next one, also a future question.
You can also skip the thank yous because I love that. I love it.
Skip the pleasantries, skip the future. Okay. What do you see as the most elegant algorithm ever discovered or created?
Well, that's one of those, what's your favorite type of questions? But however, and I always used to answer that by saying there is, it's like asking a parent which of their children is their favorite stuff. But in the case of the most elegant algorithm ever discovered or created, I realized a couple of years ago that I do actually have an answer to that one, and it's Bob Tarjan's algorithm for the strong components of a graph. And so that was the subject of my annual Christmas lecture last December, and you can find it online. It's called Strong Components and Weak Components.
Interesting. Do you have any suggestions? Anir asks, do you have any suggestions on how current students should pick and decide what topics to work on, assumably within computer science?
Yeah. I kind of think life is a binary search. You try something, you find out if it has your name on it or not,
Right.
based on the way the experiences you had when you were growing up, and the way, I mean, everybody's brain organizes itself into something based on their experiences, and some things become easier for them than it is for most other people, and you get to learn that by trying stuff.
Did you have any influence? This is my question. Are there any major influences on the way that you approached your career in terms of like computer scientists or anyone that really made an impact on the way that you drove your career?
So there are certain mentors that I had that were particularly important. In the early grades, it was the people who taught me how to diagram English sentences. That was sort of a favorite pastime when I was in 7th grade. When I was in college, my calculus teacher, Paul Gunther, was wonderful because it was impossible to impress him, and he was my math teacher, but he knew he knew as much physics and chemistry as my physics and chemistry teacher. But the main thing is it was really hard to get him to say that was good work. So I appreciate what he knew. in my advisor, Marshall Hall, was my first chance to see somebody doing world-class research, and then I had like mentors like De Bruyne would come to visit Caltech, and he taught me so many things about uh, how to work on math problems I was stuck on. And then I would take it to him, and he'd say, "Oh yeah, you do this," and then I would learn that. And a year later, I'd get stuck in another one, and I ask De Bruyne again, and he'd tell me the next step. So yeah, there have been, and Bob Floyd was another major major mentor. We I dedicated a book to him. I said to Bob Floyd, my partner in Augrime, Augrime. That's an old way to spell the word algorithm.
Hmm.
And so Bob and I spent all kind of time brainstorming during the 60s, especially.
Interesting.
Yeah, I also had a year when I was working on crypto, and my office mate Ed Bender and I. It was amazing that each of us complement each other's in a certain way. That we whenever one of us would get stuck, the other one would see would understand why and how to go the next way and back and forth and it turned out that we were somehow so good as a team. It was exhausting because we sort of had to later years to avoid each other. Otherwise, we'd be under obligation to discover new theorems. Because it was too good it was too good a match. It was unsustainable.
You mentioned a Bosendorf, which I think is a piano, right? Earlier.
Yeah.
Because I play music. Do you are there any like musical influences that I mean, obviously like they probably didn't drive your computer science research, but are there any important musical artists that you admire that and
Okay, so
the relationship between computer science and music?
yeah. Okay. Well, if I have to tell you about that I spent more than 50 years thinking about, and then about writing music for pipe organ, and I had this dream of starting in the 60s, and finally I got to be 75 years old, and I said, well, if I'm ever going to fulfill this dream, I better get started pretty soon. And I was in Vienna, and I went to the store in Vienna, Dubliners, where Beethoven and Brahms used to buy their note paper. And so I thought, well, that won't hurt. And so I bought some staff paper there, and I started writing this piece called Fantasia Apocalyptica. And there's more than what you want to know about it if you look up Fantasia Apocalyptica on the web. But it basically it's a piece that written for pipe organ at 3 Macintoshes, and it lasts 90 minutes, and there's some very good recordings have been made, and we had the world premiere of it on my 80th birthday.
Okay, and now we're going to go to another question in the audience. The Douglas asks, is it often suggested that computer science is it is often suggested that computer science is connected to finiteness or constructive ideas. Do you see yourself as more of a finitist or more on the classical side? For instance, do you accept the existence of actual infinite sets and similar notations?
Okay. Actually, the, I'm definitely a finite person. When I was a professor at Caltech, right after my PhD, the guy in the office next to me was Peter Crowley, and he and I intersected at countable infinity. He never thought of anything that was smaller than countable infinity. I never thought of anything larger than countable infinity. That's a bit of an exaggeration. I sometimes went up to real numbers, but to me, finite numbers are plenty interesting. And when you say that something is big O of one, that's still that big O can can cover constants that are much larger than any human being could ever imagine. Even I have this number that I call Super K, and I have a special font developed for it. What's it? Look up Super K, and anyway, and it's a finite number, but still, it's so mind-boggling that I wouldn't mind if I couldn't be immortal, but I would only live Super K years. So anyway, but that's not because I think that infinite numbers aren't important. It's just that I know what I'm good at, and I know what easy for me to work with. And everybody and other people should follow their own preferences in that. But certainly finiteness. I guess I give a talk called Coping with Finiteness. Yeah, that was to the AAAS in the 70s, and that's been published. I guess the Super K is in there.
And by the way, we are at 50 or at 1:58, and we would just want to be respectful of your time if you have to head out.
Just go on until you're
Do a couple more.
until you're saturated. So.
Okay, finish the session. Okay. Jacob asks, I read you wrote an article titled The Potrzebi System of Weights and Measures. I'm wondering why Potrzebi, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm Polish. I wonder where did that word come from and what it meant back then.
Yeah, so as you know, it means something about poverty. So it was a big deal in Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine, I guess, went away a few years ago, but it was a pioneer in satire, and it